So today, got a lot of things to talk about and not enough time to talk about it. But what I want to do is go over some goings on in the world, why it is that we're having riots in the United States of America. It should be no surprise to those who follow the Bible why this is going on. Let's go ahead and get started. And of course, those of you who've been listening to my YouTube channel, you know by now that you should know that I have been speaking a lot concerning the Trump peace plan and why it is why it could be a sign of the time of the end and why it is harmful to all involved. I'll go ahead and get started with the article on Times of Israel, Mapping Netanyahu's Annexation Plan. Experts explain a charged complex process. All right. Members of the U.S. Israel Mapping Committee tasked with drawing up the border of the Trump peace plan have been seen out in the field just once since Washington unveiled its proposal nearly 6 months ago. That's very interesting, because they've been saying it's going to take a long time, it's going to take a lot of work to map this area out, and yet they've only been seen once? That expedition in the northern, not West Bank, Judea, Samaria. I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but folks, I need to say something about this. Misnaming things or people. To call Judea and Samaria the West Bank is denying that the land belongs to Israel. That's number one. That's what it's. We all can agree on this, right? Because West Bank implies that it belongs to Jordan. West Bank of the Jordan River. They don't want to call it Judea and Samaria because that states overtly it belongs to Israel. Okay. Just like the same people don't want to call the Holy Land Israel or the Holy Land, they would rather call it Palestine, because Palestine states that the land belongs to the sons of Pelesheth, who Jehovah in Joel 3 specifically mentioned that he was going to deport the people of Pelesheth. Which goes to the next false naming. You see, the Gentiles refused to use the name Yehoshua for the Messiah because that would imply that he is Israel's Messiah, coming from Israel, coming from the Jews. Instead, they want to use a name that is more palatable to them. It is a Gentile name that comes from English, Greek, and Roman language. You see? And make a graven image of a preconceived idea of what their Messiah should look like, so that when the real Messiah comes, they won't recognize him, you see. Now I'm going to get back to the story at hand here. That expedition to Israel, to the northern Judea and Samaria, Ariel settlement, took place in late February, weeks after the plan's architect Jared Kushner said the joint team would be going line by line and street by street to decide where to put the borders. Over 3 months have passed since during which the coronavirus pandemic has somewhat understandably kept the map drawers from drawing the green line to pick up where they left off. I wonder if that's a coincidence. See, that land actually doesn't belong to anyone standing on the earth today. It belongs to Jehovah our Father in heaven. He calls that land his inheritance, and also all the people of Israel his inheritance, which means they belong together. The people of Israel belong in the land of Israel, the land of his inheritance. Who is going to inherit it? Yehoshua, Israel's real Messiah, the one that the Christians today call the Antichrist. That's who's going to inherit it. You see, Jehovah calls himself the King of Israel. Yehoshua is the crown prince. Just like in Saudi Arabia, you have the king and then you have the crown prince, and all of the other princes have to answer to the crown prince. It will be the same way when Jehovah and Yehoshua come. Jehovah is going to be king, Yehoshua the crown prince, and all the world's kingdoms have to answer to the crown prince in Jerusalem. That land belongs to him. Both Israeli and American officials have recognized, at least behind closed doors, that the mapping committee will therefore be unlikely to complete its work by July 1st, a date on which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to move forward with annexation. Now, here's another word. Let us look up the word annex, shall we? Okay, let's do like annexation of land. Well, it says right here, the act of attaching, uniting, or joining together in a physical sense, consolidating. The term is generally used to signify the connection of a smaller or subordinate unit to a larger or principal unit. For example, a smaller piece of land may be annexed to a larger one. And in a lot of cases, let's go to Wikipedia and this is the correct this is how you understand annexation correctly here. Joining, it means joining, is the administrative action and concept in international law relating to the forcible acquisition of one state's territory by another state, and is generally held to be an illegal act. So, once again, what we have here is a misuse of words by people who either don't know any better or are criminally abusing language. I used the term annex loosely, not understanding what it meant, and from this day on, I'm not going to use it concerning the Holy Land, because it is incorrect. It is wrong. You cannot annex something that already belongs to you. So applying sovereignty is the more correct way of saying it. Let us clean up our speech, folks. Of course, yes. When I say let us clean up our speech, it starts with me. Again, I will no longer use the word annexation concerning Israel and the Holy Land because it is not possible. What Jordan did by taking land from Israel in 1948, 1949, that was illegal annexation. Now, got that out of the way. But neither side willing to comment publicly on their progress. Israelis and Palestinians, or Pelesheth, have been left in the dark on the crucial decisions being made that could determine the future borders of their state. In an effort to better understand the challenges, the Cartography Committee is tasked with addressing. The Times of Israel spoke with several former Israeli officials who filled lead roles in similar mapping projects. They explained that given the complex nature of the job and the inability of the members to make trips to Judea and Samaria, the delay is to be expected. They also sketched out the key questions that the current mapping team will have to answer in order to return to Netanyahu with the final borders for his unilateral sovereignty application map, not annexation map. All right. So I think I'm done with this particular article. So what I'm going to do is remind everyone what happens when you mess with Israel. I have read this article numerous times on my YouTube channel by Bill Federer, published September the 7th, 2015. Solomon's temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BCE. On the date, in the Jewish calendar, the 9th of Av, or Tisha B'Av, the second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 78, second and the third, but we're not going to go into that right now. In 70 CE, on the same date, Tisha B'Av, Rome's destruction of the temple began at 66. Actually, it began at 67, early 67, very early, when Roman Emperor Nero appointed General Vespasian to put down a revolt in Judea. Notice he didn't say Palestine. Notice he didn't say the West Bank. Why is that? Because it was not called the West Bank or Palestine back then. Who put that name on it? Listen carefully to this particular article. Almost immediately, Rome experienced chaos. Nero committed suicide in 68. His successor Galba was assassinated within 8 months. His successor Otho committed suicide within 2 months. His successor Vitellius, now I've gone over these 4, which ones actually were emperor, which one were not. Okay, but that's another that's another video. Was executed within 8 months. Vespasian was made the next emperor, and his son Titus continued the conquest of, not Palestine, Judea. Vespasian, he was number 8 of the 7. that you read in the book of Daniel. All right? And he destroyed, under his watch, Jerusalem was destroyed. Vespasian was the king, the emperor, and Titus was the prince, the crown prince. Titus surrounded Jerusalem and starved inhabitants for months. He ordered Jewish deserters from Jerusalem to be crucified around the walls. By the end of July on 70 CE, the Roman army broke through the walls. Jerusalem was completely conquered by September the 8th, 70 CE, exactly 3.5 years after the siege began. The middle of the week. Historian Josephus recorded that over 1 million Jews were killed in the siege. According to historians Eusebius, Romans hunted down and killed all the descendants of the royal line of David. Well, almost all of them. See, one is sitting at the right hand of Jehovah. His name is Yehoshua, not Jesus. His name will never be Jesus or Jesus. Jewish temple treasures were carried off to Rome, as shown in the Arch of Titus, and were used to finance the building of Rome's Colosseum. The Colosseum was so named as it was next to Nero's 100-foot-high bronze colossus statue depicting the Roman sun god Apollo. Modeled after the 100-foot-high bronze colossus statue of Rhodes depicting the Greek sun god Helios, the Statue of Liberty, the new Colossus, was modeled after it. Therefore, the United States of America is also Rome. You know, there's a saying in the Bible that whatsoever the heart is full of, the mouth speaks. Well, you are also what you act like. If you act like Romans, if your government is based upon a Greco-Roman style, the Democrat-Republican governance, then you are Roman. In 79, Emperor Vespasian caught a slight illness which developed into a severe diarrhea. As he died, his last words were, "Oh dear, I think I'm becoming a god." Titus became the next emperor, and 2 months later, Mount Vesuvius erupted, destroying the Bay of Naples, including the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Thousands of Roman citizens were buried alive under feet of volcanic ash, and I dare say that so much volcanic ash that had gone into the Bay of Naples turned a lot or nice portion of the Mediterranean Sea into blood, so to speak. In the spring of 80 CE, Rome caught fire and burned out of control for 3 days and 3 nights. This was followed by the worst outbreak of the plague Rome had ever endured. Do you suppose that Jehovah might have been expressing his displeasure? Titus then decided to dedicate the Colosseum with inaugural games to commemorate his victories during the Jewish wars. For 100 days, thousands were killed in executions and gladiatorial fights. Shortly after the games ended, Titus developed a fever and died just after 2 turbulent years in office. In 135 CE, on the date Tisha B'Av, Roman Emperor Hadrian, this is the one, folks. This guy may have exceeded his priors in abominable acts. Had another 500,000 Jews massacres at Betar during Bar Koba's revolt. Emperor Hadrian believed the source of the Jewish rebellion was their faith, so he executed Jewish scholars, prohibited the Torah and the Hebrew calendar. Yes. And burned the sacred scroll on the Temple Mount, and he erected a statue of himself and the statue of Jupiter, Zeus. Where did he erect this statue, I wonder? I don't want to stray too far away from here. Let's see, he burned the sacred scroll on the Temple Mount. Hadrian erects a statue of himself. Let me look at this. Let's see, and where did he put it? I'm just trying to cover all bases here. And probably put it in Rome. All right. Let's go back. In an attempt to completely erase Jewish history from the land, Emperor Hadrian renamed the province of Judea, Syria, Palestina, and renamed the city of Jerusalem, Aelia Capitolina. Jews were banned from entering Jerusalem on pain of death. You see, the name Palestine was given to the Holy Land, Judea and Samaria, by one of the most foul murderers ever in Rome. So to those of you who insist on calling the land of Israel Palestine, you need to be very, very careful. You may be unwittingly placing yourself alongside this horrible, wicked murderer, this blasphemer, subjecting yourself to the wrath of Jehovah, the creator of all things. Okay, Emperor Hadrian's reign was the beginning of the contraction of the Roman Empire, with Hadrian's Wall in Britain marking the empire's furthest extent. See? Jews were later allowed to enter Jerusalem once a year to pray at the Western Wall on Tisha B'Av. At the Western Wall. Not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. Just like today. And so when President Donald Trump says that concerning Jerusalem, the status quo must remain, that means he is letting or forcing Hadrian's decree to stand, making him and the United States government Rome. The land of Israel was subsequently invaded or occupied by the Roman Empire, 135, the Byzantine Empire, the Sassanid Persian Empire, the Umayyad Caliphate, the Abbasid Caliphate, the Fatimid Caliphate, the Turks, the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, as they would say, the Abuyyid Sultanate, the Mongolian Empire. And folks, you need to understand this thing. And according to the prophets, that every one of these who tread their foot upon this land to take it as their own have put a curse upon themselves. So, man, you got the Mongolians, the Chinese, so the Mongolian Empire back in those days. I'm not saying that the Chinese are Mongolians, but yeah, you get the drift. The Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, the Ottoman Sultanate, the Druze dynasty, the French Napoleon, Tanzimat Ottoman Empire, Ottoman Vilayet of Syria, and of course the British Mandate. Now, as you know, that I have gone over so many times of how the British Mandate allotted, as they put it, Palestine as a homeland for the Jews, which would have included what they call Jordan today, but they reneged, putting a curse upon the entire British Empire. For centuries, people across the world desired a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, including Abraham Lincoln. The Library of Congress has a scrapbook with an account by Reverend N.W. Minor of the Springfield, who officiated at Lincoln's burial, in which are recalled President Lincoln's last words while at Ford Theater with his wife. Mrs. Lincoln informed me that the very last moments of his conscious life were spent in conversation with her about his future plans. He said he wanted to visit the Holy Land and see those places hallowed by the footprints of the Savior. He was saying that there was no city he so much desired to see as Jerusalem. In 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration establishing the Jewish homeland. On May 14, 1948, the State of Israel came into being, and after the 1967 war, Jerusalem was once again under Jewish control. Jerusalem was reaffirmed as Israel's capital with the basic law of Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, passed in 1980. Now, remember, the British did not follow through on the Balfour Declaration. They reneged because they are children of Hadrian, insisting on calling the Holy Land Palestine. As the Roman Empire experienced disasters when it forced Jews from the land, a series of coincidences have been compiled relating to the United States and Israel. So this next section has nothing to do, or hardly anything to do, with the other governments of this world, but just the United States. On October 30th, 1991, President George W. Bush signed the Oslo Accords, pressuring Israel to give land for peace. The next day, the perfect storm hit New England, causing damages over $100 million, including 30-foot waves, demolishing the home of President George H.W. Bush at Kennebunkport, Maine. On August 23, 1992, President George H.W. Bush pressured Israel with the Madrid Land for Peace Agreement. The same day, Hurricane Andrew smashed into Florida, causing $30 billion in damages, destroying over 180,000 homes. I was there personally to witness the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew. Words cannot describe to you how complete the devastation was. I mean, complete. Homestead was flattened. So I guess George H.W. Bush didn't listen right the first time when he got a little warning. So a big one came. On January 16, 1990, oh, and by the way, his presidency only was one term. January 16, 1994, President Bill Clinton met in Geneva with Syria's President Hafez al-Assad to discuss Israel giving up the Golan Heights in exchange for peace. Within 24 hours, a 6.9 earthquake devastated Southern California. You'd think presidents would listen, but see, they sit in their ivory towers in Washington, D.C., and nothing seems to happen in Washington, D.C. Here's a warning for folks who live in Washington, D.C. that might be about to change. On January 21st, 1998, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was snubbed at the White House when President Clinton and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright refused to have lunch with him. Now, Madeleine Albright is a Jew, and you see Bill Clinton is partly responsible for her causing offense, I should say, to Israel. And then on top of that, the same day the Monica Lewinsky scandal erupted, he also causing her, a Jew, to offend. On September 28, 1998, Secretary of State Albright detailed another land for peace agreement requiring Israel to surrender 13% of Judea and Samaria and Gaza. President Clinton met with Yasser Arafat and Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, followed by Arafat telling the United Nations that there will soon be a Palestinian state. In the same day, Hurricane George hit the Gulf Coast, costing $1 billion in damage. Presidents don't listen, especially when the storm doesn't hit the White House. On October 15, 1998, Yasser Arafat and Benjamin Netanyahu met in Maryland to discuss Israel giving up 13% of Judea and Samaria in Gaza. Once again, same thing, in exchange for peace. 2 days later, tornadoes hit Texas, leaving $1 billion in damages. Maybe if this turbulent weather hit Washington, D.C., maybe they would pay attention. Then again, they probably wouldn't. On December 12, 1998, President Clinton arrived in the Palestinian, no, not the Palestinian area. He arrived in the Holy Land area to discuss Israel giving up land for peace, the same day President Clinton was impeached. On May 3, 1999, Yasser Arafat had a press conference to announce a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. On the same day, the most powerful tornado storms hit the United States, whipped through Oklahoma and Kansas. On June 8, 2001, President George W. Bush sent Secretary of State to Jerusalem. Was he a Jew too? These guys are always getting Jews to offend. with a proposal to exchange a land for a road map to peace. The same day, Tropical Storm Allison hit Texas, causing $7 million in damages and closing George Bush Airport for 2 days. As a part of a U.S. brokered deal, Jews were forcibly evacuated from Gaza, with the last Jewish resident being dragged out on August 22nd, 2005. And of course, you know who the one was responsible for that was. Wow, I can't remember his name anymore. A Israeli, Ariel Sharon. You know what happened to him. The very next day, a tropical depression in the Atlantic turned into Hurricane Katrina and headed straight for New Orleans, forcing tens of thousands to evacuate. Property damage in New Orleans exceeded $81 billion and nearly 2,000 people died. It was one of the deadliest hurricanes in U.S. history. Instead of peace, Hamas took over Gaza and began digging tunnels and firing thousands of rockets into Israel. In a day of prayer remembrance, September the 8th, 2005, President Bush stated, Hurricane Katrina was one of the worst natural disasters in our nation's history and has caused unimaginable devastation and heartbreak throughout the Gulf Coast region. Communities decimated, lives lost, hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans are suffering great hardship, though not a single call to repentance, as past presidents had proclaimed. President Bush did end his day of prayer and remembrance with to honor the memory of those who lost their lives and to provide comfort and strength to the families of the victims. I call upon all Americans to pray to the Almighty, and he did not say Almighty Jehovah, he said Almighty God, which is a false God, false idol, to perform in acts of service across our nations. May many selfless deeds reflect the promise of the Scripture. For I was hungry and you gave me meat, and I was thirsty and you gave me drink. No, that's not what you did, George W. Bush. The Jews were hungry and you took land away from them. You see? So now we have this peace plan of the century, which what it does is, as I pointed out before, when Pharaoh told Moses, okay, Moses, after all these plagues, he says, I'll tell you what, all of the children of Israel can go and sacrifice whatever to your Elohim, but all of the animals, the cattle, and everything have to stay here in Egypt. Moses rejected that plan. He said, not a single hoof is going to stay behind. The leaders in Israel need to say to President Donald Trump that every single square inch of the British mandate belongs to the Jews. That they have reneged, and that is the reasons why these plagues came upon them in the past, and that is the reason why plagues will fall upon the nations, the Gentiles, in the future. So, if the United States of America acts like Rome, if it acts like Pharaoh, then, my friends, that's exactly what the United States of America is. Now, before I forget, I want to go to Isaiah 19. Let me show you something. Now, I saw this from breaking Israel news, and a man made a very important point here. Remember, the United States right now is acting like Pharaoh of Egypt. The burden concerning Egypt. Let's go to Strong Concordance. Jehovah, the proper name of the Elohim of Israel, rides upon a swift cow, not Jesus, Jehovah. Now, Yehoshua is going to ride on a horse. Jehovah is going to be riding on a cloud, swift cloud. And he will come to Mitzrayim. Now, notice carefully what it says here. And the idols of Egypt will be tottered by an earthquake at his presence. And the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst. Now look at this. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they will devour every man against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Wait a minute. Kingdom against kingdom? Well, Egypt has only ever had one kingdom at a time. Kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt. Oh! The spirit of Egypt shall fall in the midst thereof, and I will... Oh! This is talking about all the nations, folks. And I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they will seek their idols, and the charmers, and to them the necromancers, and to the wizards, and to those people who act like Egyptians will I give over. Will I, hold on. Well, does it say will I give over? It says I will stop the hand of the severe Adon. He's going to stop them. The fierce king reigns, utterance, saith Jehovah of hosts. So what it really means, he is going to stop the Egyptians and their fierce kings. But who are these Egyptians? Those who have the spirit of Egypt. Those who have the spirit of Pharaoh. He's going to stop them. They are always acting severe and fierce against Israel. He's going to stop them. And the waters from the sea is going to be parched, and the rivers will all be dried up. That's when the two witnesses will show up, folks. And there will be 3.5 years of no rain upon the land. All of you nations who act like Egypt. Now we're going to go to this particular article. The members, okay, this is by Stephen M. Flatow. EU hypocrites take territory while blasting Israeli sovereignty. Yes, I'm going to say sovereignty instead of annexation. France, the grand annexer, lectures Israel. How do you say chutzpah in French? Once again, Pharaoh, Egypt. The member states of the European Union, both individually and collectively via the quartet, are in a tizzy and hypocritically warning Israel against, as he put it, annexation, as I put it, sovereignty. Even as those same countries continue to occupy numerous territories that they have annexed. Let's start with the French. France recently urged the European Union to take punitive measures against Israel if it places sovereignty over anything. That's right, France, which has been ruling the 890 square mile Reunion Island off the southeast coast of Africa for more than 300 years, and the 144 square mile Mayotte Island for nearly 200 years, the area of the Gush Etzion communities is all of 45 square miles. France, which has been occupying the 5 so-called scattered islands in defiance of a 1979 UN resolution demanding that those islands be surrendered to Madagascar. France, which in 1955 announced that the thousands of miles of what it calls French southern and Antarctic lands would henceforth be considered an official French overseas territory. By what right exactly? And France, the grant's annexer, lectures Israel on sovereignty. How do you say chutzpah in French? While it has one foot in and the other out of the European Union, England too has weighed in. The Brits are furious at the thought of Israeli sovereignty. Cabinet Minister and Chairman of the ruling Conservative Party, James Cleverly, told the Parliament that such Israeli action would make it harder to achieve peace. I wonder why the British never had such concerns when Jordan illegally annexed all of Judea and Samaria, not just a tiny portion Israel is considering, back in 1950. In fact, England was one of the only 2 countries in the entire world other than Pakistan that recognized the Jordanian annexation, and this after the Balfour Declaration. Do I need to remind you what the Balfour Declaration? Do I need to post a picture? Is that what I need to do? Well, if that's what I need to do, then I guess that's what I'll do. If I can find it. Right here. This, right here. This was what the British promised the Jews. But the British reneged. Now, whether folks want to admit it or not, even though the United States of America has declared themselves free from the kings of Europe, they are acting just like them. They're acting like Pharaoh. President after president after president without exception. Where was I? Huh. Anyway, well, I lost I accidentally, let me see if I can find it again. Where'd it go? Did it just disappear? Wow. have to go look for it. All right. I posted it on social media, so let's see here. Right here. All right, so let's continue. Oh my. I wonder why the British never had such concerns when Jordan annexed all of Judea and Samaria, not just a tiny portion of Israel considered back in 1950. In fact, England was one of the... Okay, I just read that. So, okay. So it was okay for Jordan, a country that didn't even exist until the British created it out of whole cloth in 1922 so that they could annex it. But not Israel. Even though the area had been in the heart of Jewish homeland for 3,000 years. London is hoping that the rest of us won't notice that there are no less than 14 British overseas territories that have been forcibly made and kept a part of the British Empire, from the Falkland Islands that British went to war with Argentina in 1982 over latter's claim to the islands, and the United States helped them do it. So that makes United States hypocrites too. To Bermuda. Some are in the South Atlantic, some are in the North Atlantic, some are in the Caribbean. Pretty much everywhere you go on the globe, you can find pieces of the old British Empire still in operation. What are some of the other EU member states who presume to lecture Israel and threaten Israel? There's Portugal, which annexed 908 square mile Azores Island some 500 years ago. Spain, illegal occupier of the 3,000 square mile Canary Islands since the 15th century. Greenland was forcibly made part of Denmark in 1814. Don't forget Curacao and Aruba, which were annexed by Holland, along with St. Martin, Saba, and Bonaire. There are many more examples. The issue is not just that these countries are incredibly hypocritical for haranguing Israel about sovereignty while themselves annexing any territory they can get their hands on. No, the main issue is that France, England, and the rest have no moral, historical, or legal right to annex those territories, while Israel has every right to incorporate the parts of Judea and Samaria under discussion and more. Those areas have been at the center of Jewish national homes since biblical times. Israel won them in self-defense and by international law has no obligation to surrender them. And they have only a small Arab population, so annexation, or properly said reunification, is more accurate. Like he said, he corrects himself like he should have, poses no demographic danger to Israel. So here's my message to European annexationists that criticize Israel's sovereignty. Mind your own business, and I mean that literally. Go and attend to the businesses of convincing your own government to release the many lands that they have occupied and annexed, and then you can come and talk to Israel about the subject. Not to mention, folks, Diego Garcia. That's a whole nother long discussion that I don't have time to talk about. Now, I hope that I have convinced everyone listening to this that Isaiah 19, the burden of Egypt, when he comes riding on a swift cloud, he is going to come against the spirit of Egypt. The spirit of Egypt, and the luxuriant in the midst thereof, he is going to swallow it up. With what? Fire. And what we see today, with the way Israel has been being mistreated, is the spirit of Egypt all over the Gentile world. I hope I have convinced you that Isaiah 19 is talking about all of Israel's enemies, not just Egypt. Now we're going to go look into Daniel 7. Verse 1, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream of dreams and the visions upon his bed. And then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. What is the great sea? The great sea is the Mediterranean Sea. And four beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof was plucked, and it was lifted up upon the earth and made to stand on its feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. That was the Babylonian Empire. And behold, another beast, a second like unto a bear, and it raised itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth thereof. And it was said, and they said thus unto it, devour and much flesh. That would be the Persian Empire, Medo-Persian Empire. The one side was Persia, even though the king was a Mede. And after this I beheld, and lo, another was like a leopard, and which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. That's when Alexander's Greek kingdom broke up into four sections. So this was the Grecian Empire. It had four heads, and dominion was given unto it. And after this I saw in night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the rest with its feet, and it was different from the beasts that were before it. It had 10 horns. That would be Rome. But Rome had 10 horns. That would be Europe. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, literally the Vatican. You see, basilica, I believe it's basilica, basilisk means little horn, or the serpent, little serpent. Before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Who were those three? See if I can remember them, the three. I can't hardly remember them anymore. Heruli, Ostrogoths. I don't remember the third one. But you can look it up and find out. And behold, in this horn were eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down. In what way are they going to be cast down? Let me show you. Haggai 2. You notice this sounds eerily similar to what is written in Isaiah 19 concerning Egypt and the spirit of Egypt. Verse 20, and again the word of Jehovah came into Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak unto Zerubbabel king of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth. That's when he's going to come riding on a swift cloud. And I will overthrow the thrones of the kingdoms, just like it is written in Daniel 7. Wait a minute, just like it's written in Isaiah 19. Kingdom against kingdom. How is he going to do this? We go back to Haggai 2. And I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the Gentiles, and will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and the riders shall all come down, every one by the sword of his brother. Yes, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Watch, let me see if I can find another one that says kingdom against kingdom. All I see is Isaiah 19:2 on this. But anyway, you get the drift. So we're going back here. That's how it's going to be done. So these Pharaoh-ish leaders of this world, they're going to be overthrown. It says in Haggai 2, everyone by this, and also it says in Ezekiel 39, everyone by the sword of his brother. We already have the foundation of that beginning right now. Not just in the United States, but that foundation has been building for quite a while in Europe. And you wonder why these riots are going on in the United States and in Europe. It's because Pharaoh has not been minding his own business. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. Who is the Ancient of Days? His name is Jehovah. Holy is his name. The Father. He came on a swift cloud, and he comes down against Egypt, aka Rome. You see, where it is written, watch this, let me show you something here. Sodom and Egypt. All right, talking about two witnesses and what happens to them. Where will they be? Well, they will be prophesying against Rome. They're not going to be prophesying against Jerusalem. Now, it says right here, when they have finished your testimony, the beast that ascends out of the abyss, out of the great sea, out of the Mediterranean Sea, shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them, and the dead body shall lie in the street of the great city. Now, nowhere in history has Jerusalem been called a great city. Only Gentile cities have been called a great city. Jerusalem is a small city. Very small. The great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. Spiritually? Didn't we just read in Isaiah 19 the spirit of Egypt? Now it also says where our master was crucified. Let's go look at Strong's Concordance. And let's see. Doesn't have to. Above? Place, since, there, whenever, where, whereas. Oh. It doesn't necessarily means where. Whereas could be whereby. Oh, that makes a big difference, doesn't it? You see, folks, Yehoshua was crucified outside the city of Jerusalem. He wasn't crucified in Jerusalem. Everyone knows this. So, who crucified him? Watch this. Let me show you something. To be handed over to the Gentiles. Who crucified him? Hmm? The Romans. What is the city of the Romans? Rome. All right. Even Christianity knows this. Not Jesus. Yehoshua was crucified at a spot outside Jerusalem called Golgotha, which in Aramaic means place of the skull. Now, if he was crucified outside of Jerusalem, that means he was not crucified in Jerusalem. So why are we reading it this way? And what great city, well, that rules Jerusalem out, where our master was crucified, well, that rules Jerusalem out. What other city is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt? Rome, folks. Now, I hope you know by now what this Egypt in Isaiah 19 really is. It is called Egypt here in the chapter of Isaiah 19. There is your answer to the riddle of Revelation 11, verse 8. The holy city is never to be called Sodom and Egypt spiritually. It is Rome. The Romans were the ones who crucified Yehoshua. I hope everyone understands this now. Whose garment was white as snow, and the head of his head was like pure wool, like refined wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and its wheels as a burning fire. And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and myriads stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Daniel 12. And I beheld, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke. Who is speaking these great words? Well, not only the man at the Vatican, but the whole beast of iron, all of Rome, putting their thumb down on Israel, refusing to allow the commencement of the new covenant for Israel, as written in Jeremiah 31. And I beheld, even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away from them, and their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And in Isaiah, I believe it's 24, it says they're going to be locked up in prison for many days. Now, one of the reasons why I refuse to predict that Donald Trump is only going to get one term is because of this very scripture concerning the one in Isaiah 24 and this one right here. The rest of the beasts had their dominion taken away, and their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Verse 13, and I saw in the night visions that I behold, like the Son of Man, came with the cloud of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before the Ancient of Days. And there was given unto him a dominion. This is what these nations are trying to stop. They're trying to stop Scripture from being fulfilled. They're standing away in the way of the new covenant for Israel, including the United States of America. There was given unto him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all the people, all the Gentiles and the nations should serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall never pass away, and his kingdom with that which shall not be destroyed. All right? And we see here that horn made war with the saints. That was during the time of Vespasian and Titus, and prevailed against them. And they remained under the thumb of Rome until the Ancient of Days came. And justice was given to the Jews, who are the saints of the Most High, because the saints are the holy people. And the time had come that the holy people once again possess the kingdom. All right? So judgment is going to sit. And the dominion of the Gentiles, Egypt, Pharaoh, is going to be taken away, and it will be consumed, and it will be destroyed all the way to the end of the kingdom. That means United States too, because you see, folks, United States is one of the most guilty parties in the world today. And I'm not saying in the world yesterday, I'm talking in the world of why am I saying this? Because they are holding the most Israelites of all the nations hostage. Hostage. All the Jews and all the Israelites that live in the United States are being held against the will of the Father, are being held hostage in prisons, as is written in Ezekiel, I believe it's 36. Or is it 34 or 35? He's going to dig them up out of their holes and out of their prisons. On that cloudy and dark day, we are in prisons here. And dominion in the kingdom and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole of heaven shall be given to the people of the holy people of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey their king. So Israel will no longer be obeying the United States of America. Israel will no longer be obeying the kingdom of Great Britain, nor France, nor Russia, nor Rome, but all of them have to obey the Prince of Israel, the King of Israel, and the Crown Prince. Brother against brother. We are seeing the foundation of this event occurring before our very eyes. So it should be no surprise that you see what is going on in the United States of America today, while this Pharaoh-ish activity against the people of Israel is going on. You should not be surprised. Do not be surprised if it gets worse this summer throughout the fall. Don't be surprised, folks. The nations around the world are seeing incredible weakness in the United States. And my, oh my, would they love to take advantage of it. Don't mess with Israel. You see what happens when you mess with Israel. And I'm telling you, folks in Washington, D.C., you're in danger. You're not in danger from me. You're in danger. The creator of heaven and earth. You're in danger of his wrath. Watch out. Prepare yourselves. It's going to be a wild ride.